Welcome to Figure Eight, where we feature inspiring stories of women entrepreneurs who have grown their businesses to 7 and 8 figures revenue. If you're in the mix of growing a bigger business, these stories are for you. Join us as we explore where the tough spots are, how to overcome them, and how to prepare yourself for the next portion of the climb. I'm your host, Julie Ellis. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and a growth and leadership coach who co-founded, grew, and exited an 8-figure business. This led me to exploring why some women achieve great things. And that led to my book, Big Gorgeous Goals. Let's explore the systems, processes, and people that help us grow our businesses to new heights. If you're interested in growing your business, this podcast will help. Now, let's get going. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Figure Eight. Today, I'm in conversation with Cari Kenzie. And Cari is an entrepreneur who grew a multi-million-dollar business and has now reinvented herself after having a catalyst event in her life. She has reinvented herself as a keynote speaker, a resilience coach, and a strategic advisor to other entrepreneurs. She started a company called Skyline Dynovia, and she also recently founded another company called iShft. They are revolutionizing leadership and personal empowerment. So she's focused in on that resilience and empowerment, and I'm so excited to talk to her today. Welcome, Cari.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
I'm so glad and so interested to talk with you because building big businesses is hard work, and scaling up and doing all the things. And it's always interesting when you reach a crossroad where you take a hard turn in a different direction. So tell me about your business that you founded first.
So the company, I actually purchased the company when I was 30 years old. I had started in the organization as a satellite office, kind of a sole office as the sales and marketing executive. And the owner of the company came to me, I want to say within 6 months to a year of me starting, and said, "Hey, if you stick with me, I will sell you the company in 5 years." And that's what happened when I took over the company in 2000. I think it was 2000. Shortly thereafter. Anyway, when I took over the company, it was just myself and one other individual. And I ended up building that company to having right around 21 employees at its height and being a multi-million-dollar organization. So it was quite the journey, navigating so many different elements and recessions and identity crises as you're going through the whole process to get it to a place where it had that ability to be able to function at the level that it did.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, like the different ways we come to entrepreneurship,
Yes.
like you're talking about having bought something,
Mhm.
which is, an interesting and different entry point because thankfully, I think probably had some idea of what you were walking into because you'd been working there.
Yeah.
And you must have had some idea of what you wanted to do with it.
Really no, which is interesting. I mean, when I think about it, the only thing I knew was sales. That's it. And I knew sales and I knew I could do it better. Uh, and that's what I stepped into the organization with. I literally had no thought processes that told me that it could potentially fail. I did not have an idea around operations. I did not know how to run accounting, how to run books. I didn't know what a profit and loss was. I mean, there were so many things that I had to step into to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the saving grace for me was in the passion of the business, in the idea that I can do this better, and in having no understanding of what the potential downfall could be.
I think in some ways that's actually, you almost need to have that viewpoint because otherwise you can really get trapped in fear and the downfall becomes inevitable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think the financial piece that you're talking about is one of the most common things I see with entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They don't understand the profit and loss and the financial side, and they're afraid to really dive in.
Mhm.
And yet, the sort of other side of the coin on that is it's one of the biggest risk points for you if you don't dive in and learn about it.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, and unfortunately, I learned that lesson the hard way. What I will say, the thing that I did in growing that business that took me a while to get to the point of understanding was I honed in on my skills and I understood what I was good at and I understood what I wasn't good at. Now I can do a lot of things as entrepreneurs can, right? We have the ability to step in and to be able to do everything. But understanding that it's actually more beneficial to not do that was probably that tipping point for the organization itself that allowed it to go from there was two full-time employees and a temp worker at one point into launching over the course of a year, like growing exponentially both in staff and in profits. And it's just by understanding like my gifts and who I am within this, not trying to take on too much, and then allowing other people and empowering them to step into their own leadership roles.
Yeah. And so tell me about the company. What were you doing? What was
We
the
Yeah, we did three-dimensional and interior design. We specialized in trade shows, events, and exhibits. When I started, we were solely a sales office and sales and design. And by the time I sold the company, we had storage, warehouse facilities, full project management. I had a team that traveled around the world with the exhibits, setting up, tearing down. I mean, we really had taken kind of that one little piece and expanded on it and became the source for our clients as it pertained to trade shows and exhibits.
hmm Well, and
Mhm.
I think there's such a need for that. I mean, as somebody who had a relatively small business and traveled the world doing trade shows, it's a lot of work.
It's so much work.
I remember,
Yes.
hauling a big display off of a
Mhm.
luggage carousel and thinking, when am I going to grow up enough that I don't have to be the person who's lifting this 50-pound container?
Yes. Yes, I know. And it was always so interesting to me, because we'd travel and you'd come back and be like, oh, you got to go to Sao Paulo, Brazil? I'm like, uh-huh. I didn't see any of it. Like, I saw the inside of a convention center for 7 days, but, it's such a necessary and beautiful experience to get to have. But you're right, like that element, that full service component, we very quickly realized it what is exactly what clients wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they're big enough to be able to afford it, then it is a value for
Yeah.
sure it's one thing when you own your own business and you're hauling the display, but like to ask your team to do a lot of that stuff gets hard, right? If you're sending people
Yeah.
out. So yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And so that company then grew over a number of years, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it did.
and did you ever think you would leave it? Like as you were growing it? No.
No, actually, I'd always said, like, this is the retirement. This is the plan for the family. I mean, that was really, I'd been in that business since I was 25 years old. And, then having purchased it when I was 30, I mean, that was like my career. It's what I knew. It's what I loved. It's what I was passionate about. That had become my family. I mean, to be quite honest, that had become my identity. And so the thought of leaving actually never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's interesting, right? And I think it is also interesting when, like you saying, it became your identity.
Yeah.
I can very much relate to that, and I think it's one of those things where there's different ways. I mean, I think it's why for me, when I left my business, it was so hard for me, and I
Yeah.
sat on that plateau for quite a long time trying to figure out where I was going to go next.
Yeah.
Um, but you kind of landed on you had an event that happened to
Mhm.
you. And so you were in Boston in 2013.
Yep.
And were you running the marathon?
I had run the marathon that year. Mhm. Yeah, it's the first time. So excited. I remember it was like the perfect marathon day.
It was a beautiful day.
Yes, it was absolutely gorgeous. and had finished that race. Unfortunately, found myself in the medical tent upon completion. I had just completely drained my body. And so was in the medical tent being attended to. And I was actually sitting waiting for, I believe they were, water, nutrients, IVs, whatever it is that they were going to do when the event occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were pretty close to the finish line.
I was very close. I was at in the medical tent at the finish line. And when the first blast happened, I actually was like, oh, I didn't know that this is how they celebrated Patriots Day. It's a holiday in Boston. I didn't know they let off cannons. And then that second blast happened. And when that second blast occurred, it literally felt like the ground was going to come out from underneath me, like the core of the universe had shaken. The tent shook and I shook. And I remember looking up and I caught a volunteer in the eyes, and with unspoken words, we knew immediately what had happened. We knew that bombs had just gone off. And so I very quickly stood up, looked around the tent. It feels like everything happens just in a flash. It is so fascinating to me how that time warp thing happens. But all of a sudden, they're starting to bring in what I call like the casualty of limb and those who had been, directly impacted. And I immediately stepped out. I did not know where my family was at this time. And so I'm looking up and down the street. I look down Finisher's Alley. There's nobody there. I look back towards the finish line, and there is a line of volunteers that start screaming at me. And they're like, run as fast as you can. And they start chasing and I start running. And I don't remember how far, how fast, how long, or when I ever stopped, but I would eventually find my family. Now, what made this a catalytic moment? And I just kind of want to lay this out because, yes, it was an incredible experience. Like, not a lot of people find themselves in the midst of an attack like that. But the shift, it was this, and this I find is just way too common. The next day, I'm standing at the end of Boylston Street and I'm overlooking the devastation. I'm wearing my finisher's jacket, and a reporter comes up behind me, taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "Can I ask you a few questions? Can you tell me where you were? Can you tell me about your experience?" And in that moment, there was a voice in my head. You know how we have like those thoughts and those conversations? And this one pulled forward with such authority. It said, "It is not your story to tell." And I turned and I walked away. And it did that. I can understand now. It did it in a show of resilience, because this is what we feel resilience is. You get up, you brush it off, you move on. You weren't hurt. Your family's fine, right? And so I took every emotion, every feeling. First, it was shock, and so it was easy, right? It kind of overshadowed, but I took every emotion after that and I packed it away.
Yes. It's like going from the beginning of the process, the shock, to the end. And you're like, I'm perfectly fine. I'm back.
Yes.
Nothing happened. I was very fortunate, but now we move on.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened so instantaneously that I literally came home from that experience, went back to work the next day, watched the unfolding of the events as the manhunt continued over the course of that week, watched it with my staff. They catch the second brother, we turn off the TV, and I went right back into my life. It worked for a hot minute. This is what we do as entrepreneurs. This is what we do as high achievers. This is what we do when we have organizations. I don't care if it's big or small, is we take ourselves and we duct tape ourselves together, because if anybody sees vulnerability, if anybody sees weakness, right, that ground that shook from underneath me, it's going to come out and I will lose everything. This is the fear. And so we tend to grab a hold and take control of everything around us and outside of us, and then we hide. I became so ill by the fall of that year, really end of summer, that I could not walk up a flight of stairs unassisted. I could no longer sign checks in my own organization. I had to delegate that out, but nobody knew. And this would go on for a number of years. I would hide all of this, right? And I would continue going about my business, and my health would continue to deteriorate. And it's because I had placed so much of who I was in that business, so much of my identity and my value, right? And how people saw me in what everybody else experienced of me. And I lost myself in the process. And this is what I found, like I say, over the course of years, you guys, this was not like an instantaneous, oh, hey, maybe we should figure this out. It took a long time to unpack. But when I did, I came to this realization that, you know what? I have to understand me, and I need to understand who I am outside of this business, outside of the staff, outside of my family. And when I do that, it completely shifts my perspective and allows me to see things from a different view, right? With clarity. I can have a compassion and an empathy for other people because I now have the ability to be vulnerable, and I allow that within them. It made me a better leader.
Yes. Yeah. Once you were able to sort of peel back those layers.
It was peeling back the layers. It was understanding. And again, I chased the medical side of things for a long period of time because my body completely shut down. I mean, the list of ailments and debilitating illnesses just kind of racked up over a course of years. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with a woman that it really started to invite me back to myself and to who I was and to the experiences that I had, right? And to those moments where my confidence had been shaken. And yeah, Boston was a huge one, but I also was in the organization and ran my company between 2008, 2009 of the recession. I was in the organization when 9/11 happened. And you know what happens to marketing during those time periods, right? So I had been through so much and just kept charging forward. Well, your body eventually will begin to shut down because you can only contain so much and it needs to be expressed. And when I started to pull away those layers and when I started to understand, like, oh my goodness, this is what's been happening with me, right? Then I was able to, like I say, come back home to an understanding who I was, which then just allowed me the experience of myself and allowed others the experience within them. I was no longer holding control outside. I let go and allowed other people to step in to their greatness. Yeah.
And how did you then, on that part of the journey, the sort of, in the few months post Boston Marathon to the time you decided to sell the business, how
Mhm.
did that unfold for you?
Oh my goodness, it was a journey. It really was. Like I said, I really had to navigate through a lot of that Western medical, holistic type of side of healing. That went on until 2016. Really kind of those moments, what I would say, the things that became very clear to me as far as like, how I was able to navigate through was one, I became very present, meaning that I had to allow myself moments to be in stillness, to have an understanding of what was happening, not just around me, but in me. And when I was able to do that, then, that little nudge of intuition that we have as women. I mean, I think men have it too, but women, it just is very powerful. We just tend to shut it down. That intuition, that wisdom was able to start speaking and coming forward. And I would catch signs, right? We're always looking for signs. What's the next thing? What should I do? And I would catch these little snippets of, oh, you know what? I've seen that 3 times. I wonder if maybe I should ask that question. And I would ask that question, it would open a door. And then it would kind of move me on to the next thing. And I continued to follow this curiosity. I had no attachment to the outcome. Typically, what happens is like the only time we truly make change or we tend to like become and come back to reconnected to ourselves is when we're brought down, right? Is when these kind of moments happen or when life changes abruptly and all of a sudden, right? Kids leave from home, a relationship falls apart or something happens in the business, then all of a sudden we have to take that look. That's that invitation by chaos, right? That's that invitation by confusion. If we can allow ourselves to become present enough in that moment to allow that confusion to happen and begin to unfold, we can get curious. And that's what I had to do. I had to follow this curiosity. It took me to a conference in 2016 where an email comes across my across my screen. And that just immediate reaction was, I have to be there. I don't know why. I'm signing up for it. I don't care the cost. I don't care all I want. Like I need to be there. And I signed up, and that happened to be one of the major pivotal moments. Just in a conversation, I had a conversation with a woman. It's kind of like she slid a napkin across the table. She goes, call this gal up. I think she might be able to help you, right? Because at this moment, I haven't slept in 5 years and or 3 years, and the chronic Lyme disease had kind of come forward. It's one of the things that I was dealing with. So I call this gal up, and I always joke when I'm speaking, like, she goes, yeah, so tell me about your childhood. Like, no, you don't understand. Not why I'm
You don't
here.
understand. I have chronic Lyme disease
I
and
have
I need you
chronic
to
Lyme
help me
disease.
now.
Like, right, this is what it is right here. And again, as high achievers, that's where this is the problem. Fix the problem, right? Can we just fix this? But what she caused me to do is she made me be vulnerable. She made me start to look at things more deeply than I had before. She was like, I understand, but that's a symptom. And we need to understand the source. And so she caused me to open to a vulnerability that allowed me to be more deeply curious and brought a different kind of clarity forward that all of a sudden made this connection that went, you know what? I think maybe the stress that I've navigated over the course of my life, including Boston, and the experiences that I have had are actually what have led to and caused me to be sitting in this position I am right now. And I continued to flow down that, no expectation of outcome, right? No, like, I just knew I want to be from here to here, and I don't care how it happens. And once I followed that, I got the clarity. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, I see. I see how this connects to this. And I understand how this now happens in my business. And the creativity started to flow, and the insights started to happen, and opportunities started to show up. And that's how the business continued to grow. Some of our best years were after I became ill. It's how it continued to grow, right? Because all of a sudden I had a different perspective, I had a different view. And I was able to let go of a lot of that control that I had earlier. And transformation happened, healing happened. And I came back into the wholeness of who I was. I finally understood my worth.
Right. And so then how did that impact your decision ultimately to sell the business?
Again, that was just one of those moments. I had no desire, interest in selling the organization. I actually had built a management team, and so I wasn't needed in the day-to-day operations. I had stepped out. I was already starting to build coaching and continue my own healing process. I was doing a deep dive in neurosciences and quantum physics. And so I really kind of was leaning in that direction. And I received a text message one day. And this text message was from a peer. And he said, hey, if you ever think about selling, I would offer you multiples of what you could get anywhere else. And I immediately, kind of that instinct, the same one that took me to that conference in 2016, I immediately responded back and I said, I think you caught me on a good day. And then I went, what did I just do? And I sat with it, and I had to I go back into that like real present space with it, because I think we as entrepreneurs have such an amazing instinct and a wisdom within. But unfortunately, because of the way the system is set up and because of the expectations that are laid on us, we shut that down, right? We're kind of moving one thing to the next, and we make these quick decisions, or we ruminate too much, right? And then I'll talk myself out of it, which could have definitely happened in this moment. But I sat with it, and I really kind of asked the question internally through meditation, through prayer. And I was like, is this what I'm supposed to do? And I felt a very strong yes. And I thought, okay. I shortly thereafter received another offer and was like, is this the direction? Yes. And I just kept following that through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think it's one of those interesting things about timing because
Mm,
ultimately, as an entrepreneur, I think what you build in your business is your future. It's not, you
yes.
don't have a pension, you don't have, if you have health coverage, it's because you are buying it for yourself within your own company, and there's no assurance you'll have it forever. All of those pieces that kind of come with having your own business. And it's not like magically one day at retirement, somebody's going to appear and buy it, right? So your own good timing isn't always what is going to play out in real life.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I think too, it is that idea of like, yeah, it's that, you have the plan, like I did. I had the plan. I was going to be in this organization. This was going to be the retirement. You get a text message, and I could have stuck with, no, that's not the plan. This is the plan. This is the thing that I set out to do, as opposed to listening to kind of that wisdom or that guidance or kind of that nudge. And to this day, this gentleman who purchased the company and I both are like, I am so grateful that everything played out the way that it did, because I was in the marketing business, trade shows and events, and we all know what happened in 2020. And had I not listened to that intuition, had I not followed that kind of gut reaction, I would have lost my business because of the pandemic, right? So I think too, it's that learning to trust yourself and learning to trust that inner wisdom and that inner knowing, but allowing yourself that moment to just sit in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the confusion, and bring a curiosity to it. Because when you do that, the answer will arise. It comes from within. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is one of those things where, like, why not? Why not have the conversation? I mean, maybe it wouldn't have
Yes.
gone anywhere also. That was entirely
Right.
possible in that moment. But why not?
Exactly, right? Just kind of see where it goes. And since then, that's kind of how I've navigated my journey, right? It's took a deep dive into studying and all the classes, and my ex-husband at the time would say, "Gosh, why are you doing all of this?" And I go, "I don't know. I just know I'm supposed to." Right? And so it's just continuing to follow that, not be attached to anything. I mean, that's where the beauty arises. That's where we get to be ultimately, creators and creatives and leaders, not just for the people around us, but for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how has that freedom, the after of
Mm.
selling the business, led you to what you're doing now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I would love to say that it was like instantaneous. I knew exactly what I was going to do. It took me a little bit, right? Because I think I'm going to call it like the entrepreneurial corporate hangover, right? It doesn't matter the work that you do or the questions that you ask or the deep dives that you do. There's still that little bit of, remnants of what had been and what you had done and the success that you had that kind of hangs out. And sometimes being incredibly successful can be detrimental. And I say that because here I had this amazing, successful, like thriving business, and now I step out to do something different, and it's like, oh, but can I do that again? Right? Maybe that was it. Maybe. And then we're always measuring up, right, to like what had been, and then the self-doubt comes in. I mean, it's just a fascinating journey that we all have to navigate, right? And so I kind of worked through that in order to get to a place where I was like, you know what? I feel confident and comfortable. And because of the journey I've navigated, right, throughout the course of a lifetime, and specifically within business and then that catalytic moment, I think I'm pretty sure what I need to be doing moving forward and helping other people navigate those same types of journeys. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but there's that little voice at 3 a.m. that does come and say, "It's the best thing you ever did in the rearview mirror." Like, come
Right?
on.
Yes.
How are you gonna top that?
Right. Yeah, it's so true. But I tell you what, the one thing that I say is, and when I'm working with clients or when I'm speaking, like two things. One is that if you've had it It's meant to be yours, only better. So if I've been there and I've been that successful and I've done those things, then that kind of success, that level of success is meant to be mine. It's just meant to be better,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, it's a springboard of some kind, isn't
it
it?
is. It just very much
Mhm.
is, right? And then I've never known, because I think the other thing that kind of keeps people stuck in a position is the taking the risk on themselves. No matter what they're doing, no matter if they're changing positions, shifting, uh, careers, or stepping out of the entrepreneurial journey into something else, right? It's a risk you're taking on yourself. And sometimes that can be the scariest thing. And then I look back and I go, I've never heard a story or had a conversation with somebody who went all in on themselves and it didn't work.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And it doesn't always work the way you think it's going to at the start,
True.
but when you go all in, it does
It
work.
does. It does. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it's you need to drive it forward and have the vision, but you also have to stay open to allow yourself that recalibration as you get going down the path,
Yes.
right? And the faster you're going, the more quickly you need to notice when the recalibration is needed.
So true. Yeah, that is so true. And it is. It's like you've got kind of those guardrails, right? But know that ultimately you can be super creative within it. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
you're
I
right.
always
Now
think it's
you
like
can
at the
let go.
it's the bowling alley where they put up the
Yes.
little things for the kids so the ball stays out of the gutter, and that's
Yeah.
basically what you're trying to do.
Yep. That's exactly it, right? I'm trying to knock down all 10 pens and it might take me a hot minute to get there, right? But I know that's the goal. And whatever way, if I need to come in at it this way or that way, like I can adjust and shift. I just got to be open to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just gotta figure it out and keep working. Keep working it
Yes.
for sure.
So true.
And so what's it like now? So you've co-founded Shift. And so
Yes.
that's a little bit of a different journey too, going from being a solo entrepreneur who had
Mhm.
the business in the event space to now being a co-founder and having a business
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. And here's the thing that I would say, I think there's so much ingrained in us where we feel like, and culturally, it's kind of like this, where you feel like you've got to do it on your own, where you feel like, I've got to make this happen. And what my business partner, Leah, and I have come to, more of an understanding is that, the impact that we want to make is bigger than just one. And it's going to take a collective of people in order to make this happen. And I have amazing gifts and she has amazing gifts. Why not bring those together and amplify everything that we're doing? Because the impact that we want to make in the disrupting the way that we live, love, and lead, and empowering leaders and inviting them and the cultures within the organizations into a greater form of leadership, like that's the deep desire. That's what we want to do because we understand the power and the creativity and the ability that every human has to be able to step into that role and into the best version of who they are, right? It's just simply that invitation back to that space. And so why not do that collectively as opposed to individually? And so that's why we came forward and co-founded Shift.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's one of the things that, um, you've got to get out of your own little echo chamber of thinking and of perspectives
Yes.
and bring in, it's so much easier when you have other people, who are cheering you on along the way
Oh,
and who are sharing their own lessons with you and all of the different,
mhm.
pieces about what that is like.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I went through a phase, as an entrepreneur where I was like, okay, I'm an operational leader within this business.
Mhm.
So, I'm going to sit at my desk and put my head down and work. But that actually was not what I needed to do. I needed to go out into the world and meet other people who could, talk to me about the problems they were solving in their businesses. And I could learn from them and they could learn from me. And it would make it easier for all of us.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's in that collaborative spirit, I sit on the board of the National Association of Women Business Owners, their institute side as well. And, we're seeing so much of that beginning to shift, I think, collectively, where we had been in such a competitive hustle culture for such a long period of time. And I believe that women are coming to this place of realization where they're like, you know what? I don't want to do it that way anymore. And it'd be great if we could start to kind of lay down those arms and come together in more of a collaborative spirit, in a sharing of those insights and a sharing of our stories, and in a connected way that just helps to amplify everybody. And so that's what I'm starting to see. Hmm.
Yeah. And I think, we can all win. There's
Right.
room for everybody. And my desire is really to see us growing bigger businesses and
Yes.
to really like stepping into that greatness and the magnificence that we have and saying, I can see other people doing this and I want it as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think, in the beginning of the, Skyline, when I had that, I thought I had to, I thought I had to do it. It's my company, right? So I've got to do it and I've got to make the decisions. And I remember very clearly sitting in a meeting, and I was with a group of other business owners about the same size. And, I'm sitting at my computer and I'm doing I'm supposed to be in a meeting, but, you're checking the emails and you're doing all the things, and is everything still running? And, entrepreneurs say all the time, I never get a vacation. It's like the moment I leave, everything goes crazy. And they looked at me and they're like, would you stop? Stop it. You need to hire somebody to do operations. And I was like, I can't afford to hire somebody to do operations. Like, no, I've got to do it. I've got to figure this out. And I tell you what, the moment I did, everything flipped. It's like the moment I let go, the moment I went, you know what? I can't do this on my own. And it's okay to bring somebody alongside me in this journey. Everything exploded in like a beautiful way, right? It gave the opportunity for everybody to just really be able to sit in the expansiveness of who they are. And so that's what I want leaders and entrepreneurs to understand, that, we hold things so close and so tight because we feel like we have to, right? We've earned that position. We need to hold that position. We got to prove that we're worthy of being at the helm of the ship. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know what? No, just relax. We've got to let go. We've got to empower the other people. We have to understand who we are and our gifts and what it is that we can truly offer to this organization, when at the end of the day, it's your purpose, it's your mission, it's your values, it's your story, right? Because that's why you brought it forward. And then allow everybody else to take it and to run and to help build it and to help grow it. And stop thinking you have to do it all on your own, right? Because you are so much bigger than that organization. Yeah.
Yes. And I think people forget to ask themselves can you afford not to?
Yes.
Right? It's the I can't afford, I can't,
Mhm.
the timing's not right. But the bigger question really is, but can you afford not to do this? Can you afford not to hire the operations person? Because really, what
Well,
would have happened if you hadn't? You would have stayed small.
and here's the thing too. I want us to think about this, and this is a part of shift. And what we're really efforting for people to understand is we always talk about that return on investment, right? So when you're saying, can I afford not to? Right? Can I afford I can't afford it. Well, can I afford not to? Because we look at it like, okay, what's that return on investment? Like, how much more is that going to offer from a profitability standpoint? What about return on life? What about return on you and your mental health and the anxiety and all of the burden, right, that we're continuously carrying around, or the fact that I don't have the ability to like be home with my kids the way that I want to be home with my kids because my head is constantly worrying about the next thing. So when we look at that, it's like, gosh, can I afford not to? Not just from a ROI standpoint, but from a return on life standpoint. You can only sustain going at the particular pace you're going for a period of time before your body will eventually say no the way that mine did. When it shuts down and it's like, you know what, sister, let's try something new.
And I think you can only sustain yourself in the like we wear a lot of hats as an entrepreneur, and some of those hats we're not very well suited for. And those are the big like energy and life drainers
Yes.
from you, I think. And so it's also about, figuring out how to put people in place to mitigate those kind of, less strong areas or weak areas that we all have, because we don't like looking after those areas and we're not
Yeah.
good at it. And so it's very stressful.
Well, it's stressful, and then what it does, and I don't think people understand, is when you're sitting in a seat on the bus that's not positioned right for you, it is stressful. It causes anxiety, right? You're drained, your energy is completely depleted. You don't have the ability to be creative. You don't have the ability to have the insight or see the opportunities or the possibilities that are sitting around you, because your mind is cluttered. It's clogged up with all of the other things and your energy is drained. We have to have that energy flow. We have to be filling our bucket, right? We have to feel energized and excited about what it is that we're doing so that we can keep that inspiration, that insight, that opportunity flowing for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that the drag doesn't take you out of your zone of genius as well,
Yeah.
because that then you start to not even be inspired by the things you're really good at.
Exactly.
So I think that's really great advice.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I love seeing the journey that you've been on. And I look forward to following you and seeing how things grow and blossom at Shift.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you won't miss any episodes. Figure 8 isn't just a podcast. It's a way of seeing the big, gorgeous goals of women entrepreneurs coming to life. If you're interested in learning more, you can find my book, Big Gorgeous Goals, on Amazon anywhere you might live. For more about my growth and leadership training programs, visit www.julieellis.ca to see how we might work together. Read my blog or sign up to get your free diagnostic. Are you ready for growth? Once again, that's www.julieellis.ca. When we work together, we all win. See you again soon for another episode of Figure 8.